Hello everyone and welcome back to NCAT. It's time for another episode of our beloved Northwestern Dynasty. We're moving right along after the season, I guess. We're still in the same season. This is our bowl game. But during the regular season, our first season since our national title appearance and victory, need I remind you, we have a little bit of a step back here. We lost 2 games this season, which dropped us down to 11. I think we were towards the top of the rankings almost all year, but some untimely losses for us have kind of derailed our season and put us in a position to be playing a 7-5 Tennessee Volunteers team in the Capital One Bowl. So since this is our first time in said bowl, we're just going to simulate through it. I'm not showing all the small bowls, only the big ones now, and it's good that I didn't because we absolutely blew out Tennessee to go to 11-2. Another impressive season for your Wildcats. And there's our trophy. Look at there. We get a little boomerang on the trophy here. Is that wood? Do you think that football is also wood, or is that like a real football? It's probably wood. I haven't seen the old Outback Bowl trophy in real life, so I can't tell you for certain. But glossing over the other bowl games around the college football landscape, nothing too surprising to really point out or look at here, other than, of course, our victory, because, Illinois gets blown the hell out by Nebraska, so good on you, Illinois. They finally have a decent season. If you've been paying attention to how the Big Ten has been developing, or rather not developing, you'll know that the same teams have kind of been bad, but Illinois, I guess, finally scrubbed out a good season, and that's what they did with it. Also, if you noticed, Air Force finished 13th in the nation. We'll probably see that when we go through the rankings and stuff, but so both teams from last year's Natty are down, and this year, good Lord, Colorado State and Oregon State throw themselves into the bidding, the conversation, I guess, for national title this year. I guess it's free and open to anybody, but that's probably the grossest one, I believe so. I mean, 2014's was Air Force and UAB, so that one's pretty disgusting too. But Oregon State finds themselves in the national title in winning one, so good for the Beavers, I guess. John Hobson, our quarterback, gets some second-team All-American honors after a pretty decent season. 33 touchdowns to 13 picks is a nice stat I would like to highlight. The yardage is down from where it has been the last couple years. If you guys remember Meyer, I think he was our guy that broke that 4,000 mark. I'm sure we've done it before. I can't remember. It's been so long since the series has 1 started and 2 been recorded. So my memory on the first 5 to 10 years of this series is completely cooked. But that's how the All-Americans are shaping up and looking. So going now to our stat book to look over how the entire team as a whole did, it looks like our backup quarterback maybe started a few games, maybe 2 or 3 games. But John Hobson, of course, got the majority of the workload. Heath Nixon, our sophomore running back, had 1,000 yards rushing. I don't think we've had many 1,000-yard rushers in this dynasty, so that's pretty cool to look at, especially considering that Robin Nixon, who I'm going to canonically say is his brother, also had 405 rushing yards. So that's pretty dang impressive since we're not a team that runs the ball a lot. Alfonso Galloway still nearly had 1,000 yards receiving, but only 6 touchdowns. Mitch Berry, I guess the number 2 option, was a lot more productive as far as getting into the end zone or being open in the end zone. But we still had a lot of receiving yards kind of spread out amongst a good number of dudes. So that's kind of interesting to see. Virgil Lord had a very good season on the O-line. Nothing too great. I guess Terrence Baker kind of had a great year too. Only 4 sacks, which is nice. Everyone else seems to be kind of bouncing between that double-digit or 4 numbers. So I'm not too worried about sacks moving forward because we always have a pretty solid offensive season anyway. So we can eat a few, I guess. Simeon Colburn leads the team in tackles and TFLs. He has a good season for us at the middle linebacker position, which is nice to see. He also has 6 sacks, which is nothing to slouch at either, seeing that might be pretty high. It's 3rd. And Alfonso Keith leads the team in sacks with 10, but he also ties with Anthony Buchanan with another 10 sacks. So 2 guys recording 10 sacks each. That's I like seeing that stuff. Only 4 picks is going to lead the defense. Dante Turner shares that title with Austin as well. So, and then looking at pass deflections, the last stat I kind of care about here, and Vincent Austin leads in pass deflections. So, looks like both of our cornerbacks recorded 4 picks and just about the same amount of deflections. So, we got an equal amount of production from both of those dudes. So, that's pretty nice to see. And then field goal kicking, it looks like Napoleon Dyer in his 3rd year with us kind of split the difference. He had a horrendous freshman year, a pretty decent, or really good rather, sophomore year, and then his junior year was kind of a disaster again. He kind of took a step back, and that might have been where the 2 losses came from. Maybe if we could have depended a little bit more on our field goal kicking, maybe that would have helped out a little bit more. So, looking over now stat rankings, and boom, look at all the firsts in the conference, bro. Rushing yards per game, again, is always a drop-off, but everything else is first. Our offense was by far the best in the Big Ten. But we did allow a ton of sacks. Good Lord. Here I am just kind of downplaying the amount of sacks we're taking, and we were like damn near last in all of college football in that stat. So, looking over our defense, though, we have another top half defense in the Big Ten, but stats are kind of all over the place, and so is efficiency. Efficiency, we're actually really down. We were one of the least efficient teams, I guess you could say, in the Big Ten. We have a lot of lower stats here. Remember, there's only 11 teams in the Big Ten, so if you see anything like an 8th, 9th, or 10th, it's pretty bad. So, but turnovers is typically where we make up for stuff. We typically are good at generating a lot of turnovers and opportunities for our offense, and that's where we get all the good offensive stats that we have. So, let's take a look now at the top 25. Oregon State tops things off, being the national champion, with Louisville in 2nd. That's interesting. Colorado State falls to 4. Some familiar faces here in the top 10, except for New Mexico State and UAB. I don't know what they're doing here. We come in at 9, and then some more familiar faces. Air Force moves up to 13 after winning their bowl game against UAB, so it was a rematch, essentially. I don't know what bowl that was. I didn't notice, but it's a rematch, I guess. Boise State sneaks up in here. Ohio State dropping down to 20 with Purdue directly behind them. Cal sneaks into the rankings, as does Washington State, and as does Miami of Ohio. And Illinois clings on to their spot in the rankings after getting embarrassed by Nebraska. So I guess we have what? That was like 4 or 5 teams, Big Ten teams, because Wisconsin was up in the top 10 too, I believe. So, geez, like half of the Big Ten all represented. So, Wisconsin wins the conference. Ohio State, because their conference record is here at 2nd, even though they had a pretty bad season by their standards. We are in 3rd, which is kind of gross. And then Illinois, Minnesota, and Purdue kind of round out the middle part here with Iowa as well. Michigan State has a decent season by their standards because they've been pretty bad in this whole thing. Michigan has a really bad year, and then Penn State still kind of bad. And Indiana is still looking to win more than one game. I don't know when the last time they've done that in a year, but this year they didn't win any. So they are really in the pits. They are really, really in the cellar right now, and they're not getting out. But this was a very tough year for the Big Ten, man. Every team was just about 500, if not a game off or more. So, yeah, really, really tough, loaded conference for us this year. I don't think it's been that consistently good, but it was this year. So, that's something to note as we, dropped a couple games. So here are all the people leaving. We're losing quite a bit of names that I was mentioning in our stat breakdown. Simeon Colburn, who was probably our best defensive players, declaring early, so that's something to note as well. But we're going to look over our recruits now, in which we don't struggle with. And again, we do not struggle as our class is loaded with blue chips all the way top to bottom. And you can see the positions. It's kind of scattered throughout, man. I'm just loading up the team by any means necessary, getting as many high-end prospects as we can, even a few 2-stars. I don't know when's the last time we genuinely recruited some 2-stars, but the team's getting loaded up. That's some depth pieces. Why not? So we will take them any means necessary. And, of course, we have the top recruiting class again, because why wouldn't we? We always do. But interesting, Ohio State is directly behind us. So maybe the Buckeyes are reloading to finally get back to where they're supposed to be. They were 9-4 last year, which is tough. But Wisconsin's here at 11, and Oregon State, the defending champs, dropped to 12. UAB, again, sneaking up here. And New Mexico State, who was 7th in the nation, is also up in here. A lot of the names who we saw in the top 25 to end last season are piling up in here with some shocking names too. Some teams I guess you wouldn't expect, like Ohio, Temple, and North Texas. But Kent State rounds out the top 25 in terms of recruiting classes. So who knows how next year's going to look, because there's a lot of weird and interesting teams in here. So looking at our training results, we get a lot of guys. Man, look at all these breakthroughs we're getting. Everyone's cracking into the 90s, well into the 90s too. So I think we consistently had the best roster in all of college football for probably the last 4 or 5 seasons. Maybe be a little bit more fair, probably more like 3. I think we've been a national title like contending roster for probably 3 seasons now. Dating back to when we first played in the Rose Bowl, I think that was probably when, or not the Rose Bowl, the Rose Bowl in 2012. I think that was really the first year where it was like, hey, if we're not winning at all, like, we need to. Of course, the year before we went 13-1, and when we played Tennessee in the Capital One Bowl, but I feel like that USC year was like the first year. It's like, dude, this has got to be it. We got to do it. I don't know. That's just where my brain is, how I benchmark our year. But looking over the roster, the guys we are going to sort out here, there's some familiar names coming back here. We have the Nixon brothers in the backfield coming back again. I think we have 1 or 2 receivers who were big and important for us last year, making their presence known again this year. Our line is looking pretty strong. We have some weak positions here. I think in the tackle position, we never have a consistent 5-piece O-line. It's always like 2 or 3 of them are like really freaking good, and then like maybe a tackle or a guard on one side is in like the 80s. So, but again, I'm not super duper worried. We always seem to get like pretty solid production from our backup QBs, because they always end up playing at least a couple games, which I hate, but that's just how the game works. I could have turned off injuries when I did all this, but I didn't. So Vincent Austin moves up to a 99, which is crazy. I don't know how many 99 corners we've had, but we just are that team now. We just keep getting all the talent and all the prospects. So looking forward and ahead to next season. So that's what we're going to do in the next video. We're going to continue, and then we're going to see if we can repeat, or not repeat, but just get back to the BCS, because I don't want just one. We want multiple, okay? So hopefully I see you guys in that next video when we cover our next season. Lord knows which one it is, but we're looking for the gold here.